Hey, how's it going, guys? So if you guys haven't noticed, I did a little bit of experimenting and I lowered the camera angle a little bit, so I'm testing out a new angle because the other one was good, but however, I kind of wanted to like switch it up a little bit. But anyways, welcome back, guys, to another episode, another video of Star Citizen. If you're new channel, welcome. We're gonna be checking out another video by the TheAstroHistorian. So shout out and credit goes to the TheAstroHistorian for the video. And this one is called Star Citizen, the story of the Idris frigate. So I do remember the Idris a little bit. I think it was Morphologist who did like some sort of like review on it, but I just don't remember the vehicle a lot or enough because I literally ran into like dozens of like other vehicles and just by learning about them. But maybe it'll all come back to me once I start watching the video. So we're going to be checking out about the Idris frigate and see how it goes. So without anything else, let's just jump into it.
More to the right, more to the right. Stop, stop. Perfect. Oh, welcome to the museum. We're just setting up our latest exhibit. It's a classic from Aegis Dynamics. This freedom fighter is in fact still serving in the UEE today. So join us as we examine one of the oldest ships in the UEE, the Aegis Dynamics Idris frigate.
Yeah, so I pretty much confirmed it. It's the Mass Effect 3 apartment that he's in.
Welcome to the museum. This is a series where I break down the lore of items, vehicles, and ships in sci-fi universes. If you enjoy this, please like the video and be sure to leave any other questions you have in the comments below on your way out. Remember that the museum is supported by your generous donations on Patreon, so think of supporting us there to keep these coming. The Idris was born from the ashes of the First Tavaran War. Idris 4 was the site of one of the largest battles in that war. The planet was taken early in the conflict.
I forgot what ship that was, but that's really cool.
Fled to the hills.
Oh, wait, is this the Idris?
A leader emerged among the survivors, Rachel Locke. She had no prior military or leadership experience, but she rallied the refugees into a fighting force, calling themselves the Greys.
That's cool armor.
A message of resistance and hope. That message became a rallying cry for humanity during the conflict.
Humanity made this world what it is. If we walk away instead of fighting for it, then the Tavaran have already won. They'll push further into human space until all our planets and even Earth are subjugated. That's why we must make a stand here and now. Because if this front line falls, who knows how far they'll go. Rachel Locke, 2542.
Locke and her Greys would help coordinate strikes against Tavaran facilities and
I never heard of the Greys or Rachel Locke.
UPE forces. It was their intelligence which enabled the invasion of Idris 4 itself in 2544, liberated by the tactical skill of one Ivar Messer, who owed the liberation to Aegis Dynamics and their Retaliator bombers. Towards the end of the war, in 2545, the then UPE Weapons Development Bureau, or WEPDEV, started development of a new ship. This ship's sole purpose was to be a long-range light patrol craft. It was designed for the post-war future of humanity. They saw a need to keep the peace after the conflict. They imagined an 85-meter corvette that could dock a pair of light patrol fighters to its hull. The hope was by building this
is where it started blooming.
They could be built in greater numbers than the current ships of the line, seeing as the Navy was already stretched thin after this long conflict with the
Yeah, so I do apologize about one thing, guys. At the beginning, I said, wait, is that the Idris? And then I remember it said the Idris frigate, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so stupid. So I'm sorry about that, for calling that ship the Idris. But I do remember seeing it once. I forgot, it was one of the ship commercials, but I forgot what it was. But it's supposed to like mimic some sort of like bird. I think it was the hawk or something like that, due to like the looks of the wings and all that. But anyways, this is about the Idris. Let's keep going.
The Tavaran. The ship was handed off to Aegis Dynamics through a no-bid contract,
with
a number of smaller components and support contracts going to smaller, now-defunct companies. Over 3 years, this small, nimble, easy-to-construct design would balloon and morph into the Idris frigate. Between the first design and final product, Ivar Messer had risen through the ranks to become the UPE's final High General, and eventually form the United Empire of Earth, with him at the top. His close working relationship with Aegis gave him and his close associates access to this new corvette. These men and women were veterans of the First Tavaran War, and their input was eagerly taken by Idris, who had a history of working with veterans as a means to help develop their craft. These veterans saw this ship as a means to project the power of humanity and to keep the peace in an empire where not everyone agreed with the actions of its leaders. It was to be a show of force against the UEE's enemies, both foreign and domestic. Nearing the completion of its design in 2549, it was decided that the first new ship class in the UEE fleet was to be named after the Battle of Idris IV. At the time, it was quickly becoming the mythological foundation for this new empire. Aegis Dynamics decided to go one step further and build the ships in new shipyards located on the planet of Locke, the new name of Idris IV after the war. The new Aegis Dynamics Idris-class frigate was commissioned in 2551 in a ceremony at the newly constructed Locke shipyards, and was attended by Ivar Messer himself, who famously gave a speech to commemorate the event.
Freedom comes at a cost of more than lives and credits.
Is this from the game?
It requires
the audio?
commitment, dedication, and a willingness to do what's unpopular to accomplish what's right. It must be ready to crush any opposition that threatens it. With that last point in mind, I am pleased to unveil the latest capital ship from Aegis Dynamics, the Idris. It is the UEE's new definition of freedom fighter. Never again can we let humanity be made the victim. Let all who would dare become the enemy of our empire tremble as they hear of our victory in Idris and the ship that bears its name.
The new Aegis factory had 6 berths to produce the frigate around the clock. The first 6 Idrises were all commissioned by May 2552.
Wow, 6?
And began trials and their first patrol assignments later that year. With a maximum crew of 28 and a mass of almost 38,000 metric.
Yeah, let's see. Maximum crew 28, mass almost 30. Wait, 38,000? That looks like 38 million. 30 million, length 242 meters. Wow. 46 meters, that's high. Width 126 meters, roll frigate. Okay, so it's somewhere between like one of those big battleships and like a light cruise. I won't say cruiser, but kind of like the Perseus in a way.
Metric tons, the Idris is over 8 times the mass of a typical corvette, with almost 4 times the crew. With a length of over 242 meters, a height of 46 meters,
I wonder how many
and a
ships
width
this thing
of
can carry.
126 meters, she has a large cross-section. This allows for a fully functional flight deck, capable of supporting a variety of classes of fighters and bombers, and a spinal-mounted railgun. A year after the first launch of the Idris, there was a delay in production, as it was quickly realized that the ships were designed with a major flaw.
Here we go.
Particularly prone to fires. One of the first Idrises off the line,
Really?
the UES Ashton, had a fire break out that killed 17 starmen after it spread to the forward magazine. The aftermath prompted an 18-month review and redesign of the ship. The
18
first 2
months?
redesigned Idrises
Well, you
launched
gotta
in
be safe.
2555. Soon after, production continued on what was becoming known as the Flight 2 Idrises. These frigates quickly became a common sight around the Empire by the end of the 26th century. By August of 2587, the UES Idris, the last remaining Flight 1 Idris, was decommissioned. It had over 43 tours and 9 combat stars. It remains
Damn.
today mothballed in dry dock at MacArthur Naval Station. There is often talk of retrofitting the aging hull to become a museum, highlighting the role of the military during the Messer era.
That kind of reminds me of like how they did those to like old World War II, like aircraft carriers, and turned them into like museums and battleships where you could just like visit them, take a look inside, and they don't have any more combat uses because it's decommissioned, but they still have like maybe uses of like displaying and showing. So it kind of reminds me of that. So that was the Idris's first weakness. It was good all around, but it was flammable. That is very dangerous. Killed 17 crewmen, so that's over half of the crew. 18 months to redesign and review everything. But I mean, I know that's a long time, but better be safe than sorry. So I do understand that to an extent, but thankfully nothing happened in within those 18 months, like a big combat or anything emergency related. Otherwise, it would have been a huge disaster.
The Flight 2 Idrises were built between 2560 and 2800 and had a 30-year operational lifespan. Most of these would return to lock after their service to be scrapped. While the shipbreakers were forbidden from salvaging the ship's systems for reuse, they were still able to recycle about 35% of the scrapped ships towards production of new Idrises.
Wait, hold up.
This process of the scrapped systems.
Yeah, I think that's from Halo. I think I saw that on like one of the trailers. Isn't that supposed to be the UNSC Infinity? I don't know. Maybe I'm tripping.
With the passage of the Surplus Act, passed by a post-Measure UEE, civilians were allowed to purchase demilitarized, but often still functional, spacecraft, up to and including destroyer-class vessels. In the case of the Idris, it required the removal of the spinal mount railgun and any military-grade sensors and computing before being sold. Ostensibly, this was done not as a means to sell military warships to civilians, but to give civilians access to military freighters during a time of transition after many heavy hauling ship manufacturers went out of business in the aftermath of the Measure regime. However, 20 years later, a combination of new technology and a loosening of restrictions on what they could keep on the ships and who they could sell the ships to started to change how these ships were built. New technology and an updated overhaul process doubled the lifespan of the typical Idris, effectively creating
at least they got
the Flight 3 Idrises. At the same time, in the post-Measure UEE, the government was relying more and more on local forces and private companies to keep the peace in the Empire. An Idris frigate with its flight deck and hull-cracking railgun made for an intimidating presence in any system. Thus, as restrictions were being lifted for military surplus, a wave of new buyers came in to buy the Idris. Some of the first Idrises to be purchased by civilians were 3 frigates called BX-214, BX-215, and BX-218. An aid organization acquired them in 2812 in response to a disaster in the Corel system. Unexpected solar activity had caused massive crop failures in the system over an 18-month stretch of time. The rugged Idris could weather those solar storms, and as such, their flight bays were converted into armored cargo bays to deliver aid supplies to the beleaguered people of the system. Another Idris modified by civilians was the Annex. Purchased by the Historical Salvage Group in 2815, the Annex was an early Flight 2 series Idris. It was modified with a high-tech sensor package and a fleet of drones. Its main purpose was to find long-lost wrecks of historical importance to document and recover them.
Okay, to scavenge and to
civilian crew were credited with many major discoveries of lost wrecks. One in particular was a Crusader Industries Genesis Starliner, thought to be destroyed in an accident.
I've never seen the ship before. Crusader Starliner. I wonder if Morphologist did a video about that, or maybe the TheAstroHistorian, but the ship looks pretty cool.
The Annex and her drones discovered the ship intact and were able to recover the vessel. One of the oddest repurposing of an Idris was the Home Force One. A fringe political group claimed ownership of a large asteroid in the Goss system and called themselves the Free Republic of Lamia. The Home Force One was a military surplus Idris that had never had its weapons reinstalled. The Lamians used the unarmed ship in a number of political stunts to promote their cause, but within a year of the ship's purchase, they fell into bankruptcy, and the ship was eventually scuttled by the advocacy. By 2875, the demand for civilianized Idrises, combined with the longer lifespan of the Flight 3s, outstripped Aegis's ability to decommission existing ships. The result is arguably the Flight 4 series of Idrises, also known as the Idris Peacekeeper. This series of Idrises were built with the sole purpose of selling to the civilian market. The Idris P, as it has become known, is identical to its military cousin, now known as the Idris M. As it has become known, is identical to its military.
Yeah, you can see like slight design differences and things like that, but mostly it's weapons and looks like those like side thrusters, like these parts right here, that are not there anymore. But besides that, everything is pretty much similar, but of course, they would have to remove weapons, and I'm guessing like as he mentioned, sensors and other military grade items.
Cousin, now known as the Idris M, save for the lacking of the primary railgun. However, as with every Aegis ship, there is an aftermarket upgrade. This upgrade allows Peacekeeper owners to add a massive beam weapon to the front, which enthusiasts have dubbed the Idris K. Don't ask me what K stands for. I don't know. The Idris Bs are built to order for wealthy citizens, large corporations, and even militias to fulfill a variety of specific purposes. One of these ships was known as the Highness Canard, an Idris P made into a luxury yacht by the eccentric weapons magnate Hayr Forsyth. The businessman had become more reclusive and insulated over time, and on his 75th birthday, he sold all his terrestrial real estate and a significant portion of his weapons investments to buy and convert the Highness Canard as his mobile home. The details of the ship's crew, or even its whereabouts, remain unknown even to this day. Long after the last member of the family that gave birth to it has faded into history, the Idris is being produced in greater numbers than ever before. The Aegis Dynamic shipyard on Locke has expanded to meet this demand, and it seems that this almost 500-year-old ship is going to remain as common a sight in the Empire as it was when it first launched. I want to thank you for coming to my museum. I want to thank my patrons on the screen now for keeping the doors open. If you too want to see more exhibits like this in the future, consider becoming one yourself. Every little bit helps.
500-year-old ship,
be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, remember, TheAstroHistorian at Astra.
Okay, so that was really cool. I really liked how the Idris origin was basically based on a battle. Well, then again, that's how it usually comes down to, like, most of these ships. But the Idris is 500 years old. I mean, look, in the Marines, our gear is old too. I mean, I'm pretty sure the rifle I use is probably witnessed combat in Iraq back in like the early 2000s, and it's 2025. But that's why I'm starting to know see a trend here. The ships that the UEE has are all old, but in a way not outdated. The designs are like I don't want to say ancient, but old. However, they're being upgraded with like current technology, like modern technology, modern weapons. So basically, it's still in a way keeping up with the timeline, but however, the design, not the whole thing, is keeping up with the timeline. Most of it is like a lot older, like the designs of it and everything, while some of it, the technology and the weapons, are keeping up, so that way it's still functional and it can still go toe-to-toe with like a lot of enemy weapons, enemy ships, and things like that. So the story of Idris Frigate was really well told, so shout out and credit goes to the TheAstroHistorian again for doing an amazing job. But anyways, that's all I got for today. So thank you guys for tuning in, thank you guys for watching. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video, and also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. So without anything else, I'll see you guys next time.